hear the word lost, what do you think of? Well, I think of lost several ways, like winning and losing, like we lost. How'd the game go? We lost. That's a temporary setback. And then I think of someone who looks at somebody else and says, get lost. And that's a temporary get out of my world thing. And then there's the I'm lost, like when you're driving and you don't know where you're supposed to go, or I got lost walking around the neighborhood in an unfamiliar area one time. I was lost. But for those of us who are followers of Jesus, lost has an entirely different connotation. Now, we believe it as a theological concept, that people who don't have a relationship with Jesus, the Bible says one of the descriptions is they're lost. And Jesus talked about sheep helpless and harassed without a shepherd. There's so many pictures of what life is like without God. And unfortunately, we too often leave the idea of lost as a theological concept that really doesn't affect us very much. We believe it, but we don't act like it's true. Well, I had an experience a number of years ago that really taught me what lost actually means. So you're going to have to allow me to create a scene for you and visualize it with me. I live in Minnesota. In the fall we hunt deer, and it's often cold and snowy during hunting seasons. Well, my father and my brother and I go every year to hunt in northern Minnesota. And so we would get off the paved roads, on gravel roads, and then turn onto grassy roads. And we'd come to a gate where there was a meadow with a little deer hunting shack on it, surrounded by miles and miles and miles of woods. Evergreens and birch and oak and maple and scrub stuff in between. And all through those woods were faint game trails where the deer we were after were living. Well, over the years, we had built deer stands in a tree, so you climb up and you look for your deer. And one afternoon, as we were getting ready to do our afternoon hunt, which ended at dark, my dad and I and my brother sat and we decided which of the tree stands we were going to. One was called the Holiday Inn, and one was called the Palace, and one was called the Skybox, and it was way far out into the woods, farther than anyone else. So my brother Randy said, and he's an accomplished woodsman, my brother Randy said, I'm going to try the Skybox. So we said, okay. Dad went to one, I went to mine. And so I sat and enjoyed nature, watched the squirrels, watched the birds, and just as it was beginning to start getting gray in those woods, a deer came by, and I put my gun on it, and the deer went by, and I didn't have a license it was a doe, and I didn't have a license for a doe, so I looked at it and followed it. I thought, well, I got my deer, I just didn't shoot it. And I thought it's a good day just to see that. And it was getting darker, and in those woods, as the sun's going down, it gets darker faster. And then I heard someone call, Tim! I thought, who's calling me? Just a few minutes, a minute later, Tim! I thought, I better find out what's going on. Maybe it's Dad. So I got out of my tree stand, wove up that little game path to where the tree line was, and as I broke through the tree line, I looked and I saw my dad walking towards me. I said, Dad, did you call me? He said, no, I didn't call you. I said, well, somebody did. And then we both realized my brother Randy was still out in those woods. Now, let me help you understand what that means. Where we live, if you get lost, sometimes they don't find you till the springtime. It's deadly out in those dark woods where it's cold and you don't find your way home. you also have to picture with me that it being Minnesota and it being cold, that we are dressed up in deer hunting clothes. So we have a big, thick, orange camo coat, and we put on suspenders, pants. I mean, we look like Michelin men in orange, kind of, as we hunt. And we carry a backpack with us. We got our rifle. And so we're pretty loaded down, got our headgear on. And Dad said, well, I'm going to go to the cabin. And I said, I'm going back in. And so I pulled out my flashlight out of my bag. And I turned it on. And as I turned back to go in, it was so dark already, I could barely see the game trail. So I followed that game trail and found a little clearing. Couldn't even find my stand again because of the darkness. And that voice called to me while I was making my way back into the woods. Tim! Well, then I knew it was my brother Randy. And so as I found a little bit of an open spot, I raised my flashlight. I began waving it, and I called back to him, Randy! I'm over here! I'm over here! Back and forth we went. Tim! Randy! Here! Come to the light! I'm here! We called back and forth. Oh, it seemed like forever. And then I heard him breaking through the underbrush, and then I saw him. And I put my flashlight on him, and he came towards me. He was so exhausted he could barely walk. I said, what happened? He said, I never did find Skybox. I've just been these last 3 hours I've been trying to find it. And he said, man, I don't know if I can get out. I'm so tired. I said, here, give me your gun. So I put my gun on one shoulder, his gun on one shoulder, his backpack on one shoulder, and my backpack. And then I said, put your arm around my shoulders. And so I said, let's get out of here. He said, do you know the way out? I said, yes. He said, are you sure? I said, yes. And as we started back up that very faint game trail, it occurred to me that my father had 2 sons out in those woods. And so we slowly made our way back that game trail, and we broke through the tree line into this meadow, and the cabin was over there, and my dad was waiting for us. And I waved the flashlight. I said, we're here, we're here. And I'll never forget my father calling across the meadow. His voice saying, are there 1 or are there 2? I called out, we're both here, we're both here. We made our way slowly across that meadow and got into that little tiny deer hunting cabin. My brother slumped into a chair. We stripped down off his hunting coat and the layers of clothing, and we literally wrung the sweat out of his clothes. And my brother said, man, I'm so tired, I'm going to bed. So we went into the little back area where we had our bunks, and he crawled into a bunk, and my father and I sat in that tiny little kitchen in stunned silence, because we both knew what could have happened. Finally, my dad said, I'm sure glad you went in after him. And without even thinking about it, I said I wasn't coming back out without him. I have never thought about lost the same way since. It wasn't a theological concept. It was my brother's life on the line. It was life or death lost. We can look at statistics. We can know all the numbers, and we'll share some with you in our training, because the harvest fields of lost people are far more receptive than we think they are. But here's what's so important. Numbers have to become names. And until they do, lost and statistics remain theological concepts, and yeah, it looks really bad, doesn't it? Now, let me just tell you, to this day, my brother will not say he was lost. And people all around us will probably not say, I'm lost. They will not admit it. But out there in the dark that they live in, not knowing their way to get back home, realizing perhaps the danger that they're in, they're calling our names. Now, let me just say, I could have very easily said, look, I got my deer. You're lost, it's your tough luck. I got mine, you're on your own. And frankly, that's the way a lot of Christians and churches treat people who are out in the dark. But when it's someone you know, someone you love, someone you have yearned for, lost becomes real. And it's worth it to go back into the darkness. It's worth it to hear them calling our names and reply to them. It's worth it to wave our light and wait till they see the light. It's worth it to take on their burdens and then help them get their way out. It's worth it because it's life and death. Eternity's on the line with people who are far from God and lost. And you will quit. Whether you're on this game plan journey or whether you say our church wants to be more intentional about reaching lost people, you will quit when it gets hard. Unless love fuels you and you remember what lost really means. It keeps me in the game. Now, it's not always my brother, but it's somebody's brother, somebody's sister that I remember is calling out. You say, well, Tim, wow, that's a great story. You cry, don't you? I still do every time. Yes, I weep. But my story won't keep you in the game. It keeps me in the game. And you've got to have a story of people that you have loved where you understood what lost really means, and it keeps you in the game. It's not just win or lose score of a game. No, it's forever. Get up. Go into the dark. Listen for people calling. Wave the light. And when you can, bear their burden and help them get home. It means everything.